Today's topic is the cozy phlegmatic. And I think I call it the cozy phlegmatic because that's like Sam's favorite word is cozy.
Mm-hmm.
And now like Soraya will say, it's cozy. I'm like, no, it's not. It's hot. It's not cozy, it's hot. Like there's me like going through menopause going, what is wrong with you guys? It is hot in here. And my kid's like, oh, but it's so cozy. It's so cozy. We just want to snuggle up. Sam wants us to have a napping contest. I'm like, dude, I will nap you under the table any day. I think some people think y'all are lazy if they don't. And I know some lazy phlegmatics. Let's just be honest. Because I think that could be like the polarization, just like the polarization for me could be like me bitch, and the polarization for you could be like lazy. But I think that most of the time people see that. And it's not that at all. You tend to take it in, analyze what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
He's a really good people watcher.
Yeah.
And energy, he can feel people's energies really well. Really well.
No, I remember at one of my jobs, there was a freelance person that would come in. And I did not like it. I didn't have something personally against this person, but I didn't like it when they came in because I felt like there was something kind of sucking everything out of the room into this.
Yeah, he can feel that like really quickly, much quicker than I can. Like I don't feel like I have to hone it. I don't feel like you have to hone it.
And then I second guess it and go, am I some jerk to assist intolerant? But sometimes there's people that it's like, no, they're doing something that's not cool when they come in the room. They're trying to suck up everybody's energy somehow.
I don't know that those people are trying to suck it up. That's just who they are.
Yeah.
They're probably sanguine.
And or
melancholy and not balanced.
Nobody's going to guess what I'm talking about because it's like, I'm talking about 20 years ago.
Right.
But, and this person was sick an awful lot, which I thought was interesting.
It's interesting.
They couldn't get enough to sustain themselves. And I don't know what you call that exactly, but
I don't know, but I said this before. I would be super interested in doing some study on temperament and illness, just because I think like in occurrences of people being sick and terminal illnesses as well, like which things, or like major illnesses like high blood pressure for me, I totally think that that's a choleric thing. Most people that are not choleric, when I talk to them about blood pressure, their blood pressure is either normal or low.
Yeah.
You know, if I talk to a melancholy about their blood pressure, it's usually low. It's usually a low blood pressure situation. So I would be super interested in some sort of medical study where somebody understood temperament and could look at the whole thing, because like it's all anecdotal in my head.
Yeah.
When people talk to me about their ailments, I go, all right, talk to me some more so I can figure out your temperament. Just because I think that it's super interesting. I think it's super interesting, like how what we show up with affects our physiology. And I think at every turn we are, as sort of spiritual beings on this human journey, we are called to, overcome that as much as possible, like to help our bodies sort of get in line with where our spirit selves want to be, and that's a journey. I gotta tell you, like I'm thinking about my own journey since my stroke, and it's a huge journey. It's a huge journey to sort of figure out where how to balance your temperament so that you're not like going to that polarized place, and so that your illnesses stay where they should be. And I definitely believe that, in my own situation, after my stroke, I was very much like deciding, okay, I can inner work this to death. I'm going to, I'm planning to. And so, when I came out of the hospital, I had to take 21 pills a day, and it was dragging me down. It was not where I wanted to be, and it made me feel awful. And so I realized that I had to get very centered with who I was as a choleric, and where I was going in my journey in the human body part of my journey, so that I could balance. And now I take 1 pill a day. And I totally think that that's overcoming physiology, deciding that I can balance myself so that I am not in that place. And I think that all temperaments have the ability to balance It's whether or not they want to. It's whether or not they're willing to take on that, because it's not a chore, but it's definitely like, I think a lot now before I speak. It's a training of yourself.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we can look at the more negative aspects of our temperament and go, okay, well, how do I make sure that that's not, what things do I have to do within myself to make sure that that's not how I'm showing up?
Well, me being more phlegmatic and you being choleric, that can be a recipe for some bad things.
Oh, it totally could be. If I was not already on the path of balancing when you and I got together, I don't think we would have gotten together.
Yeah.
I think that, and I think that, so Erik, you are phlegmatic with a good dose of sanguine, but my ex-husband was melancholy with phlegmatic, and that was a bad recipe. That was, at least for us, it was a bad recipe. For he and I, we were butting heads constantly, and so like a lot of my personal journey has been to understand the melancholy and understand what a balanced melancholy looks like, and seek that help for our clients that are melancholy. But I think that, like for you, when we got together, I was very attracted to the fact that you were like, just, you were there and listening and open, and I'd love to know what you thought about my energy when we first met.
Well, I wasn't thinking about the temperament stuff because I didn't know anything about it.
Right.
But you seemed like you were very interested in what was going on and knowing more about what we were all doing and
like genuine.
Yeah, like a real person.
A real person. He's not going to tell you what he really thinks. So let's go through the temperament, the things that are on this chart. So appears lazy. I could see that. Like I think about our sons that that are phlegmatic, and I have used that word with Harry, in my not nice mom moments, for sure. And now I can say more things like, it looks to me like you're being lazy right now. Please tell me what you're really doing. That's a more like, and I think that we live in a culture that's like, we always got to be doing something.
Yeah.
So then as the choleric, I have to, and there's enough sanguine in me too, that I have to go, I don't have to be doing something all the time.
Yeah.
It's good if you and your partner are both balanced, and then you can rub off on each other. I think that he's definitely rubbed off on me in being able to relax and chill more. But then I think that I've rubbed off on you too, in some of the, being able to take charge of more things. And so, the other one is likes to eat. That is so our sons, and you too. I think about, I will go for the sweet thing, like lickety split. I think that's a sanguine thing, but you, savory, burgers.
And also, it was funny because there was a time where there was one day, like Sam and Soraya and I, we have this thing where we like to go to Del Taco, and we'll be there for an hour and a half. Kids have books, and we take a really long time to eat our food. And
I
then
don't know how you get started to do that.
One day we took Ellie with us, and she was really frustrated and impatient with us. So like, I don't understand why you guys sit here for so long.
They take forever to eat, y'all. Like, when we go out as a family, the other night was the first time ever that I was not the first one done. And I'm not eating fast. They just eat slow. Like, really slow.
You were involved in something, though, but I don't remember what. Yeah,
I was trying to take care. I think I was just like setting reservations or something for something that we have going on next week. And so I was divided in my attention. But I think that, that's interesting. Sam will, like, he really enjoys food. Like, and he has to work to, that's why he's at karate 4 days a week, because I worry otherwise he would be, what's that boy's name on, Augustus? Yeah, on the Willy Wonka movie, or the Willy Wonka book. I think he would be like that. I think Harry struggled with that a lot when he was younger, and we had to really help him get, a good place with it. Now he looks like he ate a tapeworm or something because he's so flippin' skinny. But I think that when you enjoy food, you just have to you have to balance it with moving enough, for sure. So we used to have to tell Harry, stop sounding like you're making love to your food. Because he'd be like, oh, this is so good. I'm like, stop talking like that. You guys are stubborn.
Yeah.
I'm reading this chart here. Stubborn. But I think the flip side of that is loyal would be the flip side of that. The positive piece of that would be loyal. You want to have a phlegmatic next to you that believes in you when you're in fights, because you're pretty dang loyal. But stubborn, I think stubborn is funny. Like I have this this visual of dragging a mule up a hill. You know how like they could tend to sit down and you feel like you're pulling. Yeah. That's sometimes how lessons feel with a phlegmatic if you cannot get them properly enlivened. And I think that I think about both Harry and Samuel. And Samuel. Harry has autism, and so there's a whole other mix there. But for the most part, both boys, they love their mother so much that they will do just about anything for me. And so I have to keep that relationship in a good place. And when I do, then things flow really smoothly. I don't want to be in a place of needing to raise my voice at them or anything because they will shut down. They will shut down. A phlegmatic doesn't do well with being yelled at. Or they'll try to fix it immediately.
Well, when I worked outside the home, and there's other situations where there's something that I don't want to do, and I'll try to figure out every way around not having to do it. And sometimes I've had bosses that are like, "You're not getting out of this."
You must do
I
it.
probably frustrated some people because there were some things like, I don't want to do this. This is, and eventually,
dancing around it until
and sometimes there's a way around it, but sometimes not. So that's when you have to kind of get control of your temperament and go, okay, I'm gonna have to do this. So I got to figure out how to make it work.
That's where that stubborn piece comes in, I think. But I think that overall, I think about both of our boys, they are very much about, if there's a fight going on, if there's somebody that's unhappy, they will be like, what can I do to fix it? What can I do? Because they want to be back in that comfortable place. Comfort rules the phlegmatic. And so any discomfort is not going to be easy for them. Any discomfort. And so moving is often fun. You're pretty good at it because by the time we've decided to move, usually it's because we have to for other reasons, not financial reasons, but just because it's this is something that's right. Because you're pretty logical too.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes when we've moved, you've been thinking about the moving for 6 months, and I'm like, I don't want to think about that right now. And you're already like,
I've already picked out a house.
We're going here. We're this and that and the other thing. I was like,
he's like, oh, I'm thinking about all the logistics, and it's going to be so uncomfortable, and it's going to be so hard. But all right.
Yes. Oh.
Well, especially when it's not a have to move, and it's a me, the sanguine in me is like, oh, look at that house. But no, I think that I think that is it's a trademark. So our middle son Jacob lives with his dad. He called me last week and we were talking, and he had gotten quite a bit. They're getting ready to move from Salt Lake City to Vancouver, Washington. And they've gotten he had quite a bit of momentum behind this, because he was up in arms. So there was all this momentum behind how crappy things were going. And I said, and his temperament is sanguine melancholy. And my ex's temperament, remember, is melancholy phlegmatic. So he's got all this momentum behind, things are going crappy and oh my gosh. And I just said, have you been talking to your dad? He's like, yeah, why? I said, well, let's have a conversation about how things are not crappy. And at first, because here's the thing with the melancholy, and we'll talk about this more when we talk about melancholies, don't ever try to cheer them up. Never. It's not a good idea. They get more mad when you try to cheer them up. And so it's okay if you say, and this is what I did say, I listened to him, and which is actually like a more balanced part of me, because before I'd have been like, you know what, dude, I don't even want to listen to this like negative talk. So, but as his mom, I put my coach hat on and I just listened. And when he was done, I said, honey, I love you and I'm willing to listen to you, but maybe you should call me back when you're ready to talk about some solutions, because I know that's really where you want to be, is in the solution place. He was like, no, Mom, I want to talk solutions now. And it like that flipped it. And we talked about where, because his dad is so dominantly phlegmatic with the melancholy, I said, he does not like change. And so you are going to have to be very gentle about all of this and make sure that you help him with solutions, because he'll get hung up on, my ex will get hung up on the problem and just stay in the problem, like just stay in the problem. And that's very evident with some things that we've seen in the past, but he'll just stay in the problem rather than working forward. So because my son's an adult and we were able to have this conversation, he was able to then help pull his dad out of that space and put him into a better space. And I said, just don't tell him that I told you that. That would be bad. But I think that what happens with the phlegmatic is because you are problem solvers, you can also think things to death, like all the bad stuff that could happen.
Well, and a lot of that stuff that could happen. Well, there's that, and there's also like trying to figure out how to do things with the least amount of energy or effort. Right. But the problem is you can end up with a self-fulfilling prophecy where right. It ends up costing more or taking more time than it should, because you're trying to find the shortcut instead of just getting it done. Right. But then there's times where a phlegmatic can set off a choleric because they figured out, like, you know, tomorrow's an optimal time to do this because so-and-so is going to be here, or the weather's this, or...
And I'm like, why has it not been done?
And it's not a holiday and there's like a bunch of people or this or that or the other thing. So it makes more sense to do it tomorrow. It's not the same as procrastinating. It's like, I don't want to do it, so I'll wait until tomorrow. Sometimes it's like...
Because he studied it out. He knows what an optimal time is.
It makes more sense to do it now or to do it later, because right now it's rush hour or this or that. So it's like, what are all the factors that make this hard? Right. And when is it not hard?
I think that when we were first married, that was harder for me. But then you realized, if you just told me what was going on, then I was fine with it. I'm totally fine with efficiency. In fact, I appreciate the fact that he finds efficient ways to do things. Like the choleric in me is like all over that. Like, thank you for finding the most efficient way. But I think that if we don't have that communication, then it can appear like procrastination, like, oh, I'm going to wait till tomorrow. But really, he never keeps a to-do list. I mean, sometimes now he does, because we have so many working parts with business right now. But rarely does he keep a to-do list, and he's got everything is right here. Like, it's all inside his head, like all of it. And I go, how can you do that? But all of the working parts are there. And then he like lays it out, and it's this beautiful plan.
When it would stress out sometimes people when I worked outside the home, especially because I worked where deadlines were such a big deal. Sometimes that stressed out.
Well, because I can remember times where you'd be like, well, I just have to tweak this little thing over here and this thing over here and this over here, and then it all comes together. And if you don't notice it, if you don't know it, that methodical thinking, he's very methodical in what he does. And if you don't know that, then it can look kind of like, it can look haphazard and like a lazy person did it. But if you know that about them, then that they're going to be methodical, then you can appreciate that methodical piece. I think that I definitely appreciate how methodical he is. But then there are times where we've had to be like, nope, you got to make a choice.
Well, because sometimes
they'll also study something to death.
Or sometimes the laziness does just kick in and things are just not happening.
Well, I think about like phlegmatic moms. Their biggest struggle usually is getting started. And once they get started, then then they can continue. But getting started is usually the hardest one for them. And in ways like, because I usually recommend getting a walk in the morning. So if you've got a phlegmatic mom who doesn't want to be out of the cozy place, and her kids are bouncing off the walls, she thinks that they're being disobedient. She thinks and then she's yelling, and she's trying to figure out, why can I not get them under control? And I will then ask, talk to me about, what your morning rhythm's like. And she's like, well, I like to roll out of bed. I like to take things really slow, take about 20 minutes to drink my coffee, and then we'll roll into lessons. And I go, but that's not what your child needs. That's not what your child needs. Your child needs for you to get going and get moving. And so once you can get to that place of getting over the hump, because I think for you, getting over the hump is the important thing, right? Because then once you're comfortable in the hump, over the hump, then you stick with it.
Oh.
Rhiannon says, my son is such a cozy phlegmatic. He is so kind and helpful, but things can take forever to get going. But he is amazing at getting things done when asked. Yeah, I think that when they're kids, so we've been talking about the adult, but when they're kids, I think that really what we have to instill in them is balance. So like with Sam, I'm continually talking about balance. One of the things with my phlegmatic, I watched it with Harry, and I was like, there are things with Harry being a phlegmatic that I was like, is that autism? But then I see them with Sam, and I'm like, nope, that wasn't autism. That was definitely temperament. One of the things that we've noticed is that we've had to I've had to get my foot in his butt sometimes about personal hygiene. He's almost 13 years old, and he's trying to get over that hump. I remember when Harry was in that place, and he decided one day he was going to take a shower every day, but he wasn't 13. He was probably 14.
Yeah.
14 maybe. Yeah, probably 14. 14 years old. He decided, I'm taking a shower every day. Guess what happens with the phlegmatic? When they decide, they do it every day. Every day. Like every day. They don't want to stop. So it's about getting them over that hump of that decision space, because once it's a habit for them, it's a habit. So, with Samuel, we've had to help him balance that piece. And because they are so tenderhearted, you have to be careful. You have to be careful and not yell at them. There are definitely times when I will turn to Erik and say, honey, you need to talk to him about this, because if I talk to him about it, I'm going to make him cry. And I won't be intending to make him cry. But there are certain topics I could already see the tears well up in his eyes. He's like, can I please give you a hug?
Well, there's been times when Harry was living here, and you would say, you need to go talk to him, and then I'd go talk to him. It's like, Mom must be really mad.
If she sent you.
To talk to him.
Let's see. Becca says, sometimes when I'm feeling overthinking stuff, it helps for me to make a list and then ask myself, what do I have the energy to take care of today? It forces me to be honest with myself about how I'm feeling and set reasonable goals instead of doing nothing because it's not comfortable. That is a really balanced way to think of things, Becca, because I definitely think that the phlegmatic gets overwhelmed. You don't ever want to put the phlegmatic in the driver's seat when you go to drive up window to order food. He hates it.
That because
he'll usually sit back and let me order.
Because everybody wants to make
alterations.
I'll just order the base thing and take the things off I want, because they often won't do it anyway. So I just, sometimes it's complicated, and and then sometimes the people at the window are out multitasking and already taking somebody else's order while talking to us. It's just this whole thing, and I go, if we're going through a drive-through, I want to use drive.
When he and I met, this is what's so funny. When he and I met, it seemed like the first time we were it seems like it was Rexburg Taco Bell. We don't do Taco Bell anymore because we live in Southern California where there's real Mexican food. So we don't do Taco Bell. But when we lived in Idaho, I can remember, and he was like, we're parking. And I was like, what are you doing? Why are you parking? I was a single mom with 3 kids. I never parked and went into a restaurant. I was like, I'm going through the drive-through. And it was definitely a learning experience for me, because that's one of the reasons why you don't like the drive-through, because they mess things up all the time. And so he would just go in. It would be easier to deal with people when you went in.
Yeah, it seems like there's been a few drive-thrus where I lost my patience with like everybody.
Yeah. Including the person taking the order. But to be fair, weed is legal in California, and do you know how many times we've got to drive up window, the person on the other end is like stoned out of their gourd. I'm like, seriously? This is not a hard job. Push the button and put the order in. Yeah. Anyway, we don't eat fast food that often, but it's just kind of funny because I think that any time that there's any activity that can be overwhelming, because I've been married to him for almost 14 years, 13 years, going on 14 years. Because we've been married for so long, I know when it's going to be something that's overwhelming to him. And so I'm aware of it, and I'm compassionate about it. And not only that, but because overwhelm doesn't look pretty for the phlegmatic, I don't want to see that for him. Like, not just for him, but I don't want to see that for everybody else. And so that's usually when the phlegmatic gets mad or sad, is when, depending on what their secondary temperament is when they're overwhelmed. And so that will come out in a sad way. I think if their secondary is melancholy, then they'll have a pity party and be sad. And if their secondary is sanguine, they're more likely to yell, I think. I mean, the melancholy can yell too, but
There's a few.
Let's see, what have we missed here? Casey said, transitioning to the next thing can be hard too. Once my daughter gets going with a book or lesson or whatever she wants, to keep going for hours instead of moving on to the next activity. Absolutely. I think that phlegmatics definitely need that transition warning. So and Sam is pretty good at it now, but he's been my child for, almost 13 years. So I would, and Harry too, I will say, this is going to happen in 10 minutes. Harry's really good at asking for the transition now. As an adult, he's 22. He'll say, let me know 20 minutes before, because he's asking for the transition. Becca says, oh, wow, the best description of phlegmatic to me. I order the base thing and just take off what I don't want. Super easy and visual to understand. And the other Becca says, I order the same thing from each restaurant every single time. He does often too. I hate going to eat at a place where I like more than one thing on the menu. That's really funny. And Rhiannon says, I always suspected that I have phlegmatic side to my ultimate sanguine. Is it possible that the test can be wrong? The test always says I'm pure sanguine. Yes, actually, I don't trust tests. And I've said that before. I don't trust the online tests, like, at all. Because they don't ever come up right for me. And studying yourself is the best way to make yourself like the purpose of study, and in its lifelong inner work. But to study yourself is the best way to really understand your temperament. And I think that the tests are often false. Like, I would say, out of all of the families that I've worked with, out of all the women that I've worked with, they'll tell me this is what my test says, and I'll be like, no, it's not. The test is wrong. 9 times out of 10. For you, knowing you, I would say definitely you have a heavy dose of sanguine for sure. So because I don't know you in real life and we haven't talked on the phone a whole lot, I couldn't tell you what your secondary is, but I definitely think that you have a lot of sanguine. I don't know that anybody is, there are some people that are pure one way, but I definitely think most people have at least one secondary, and a lot of people have 2 secondaries. I don't tend to have, I am like heavy choleric, dose of sanguine. He's heavy phlegmatic, dose of sanguine. So it's really great when the 2 sanguine parts work together. Sometimes it can be a disaster, but I think that most people have at least one secondary. I think all of our kids really only have one secondary, I think.
Then there's an element we probably haven't talked about, which is the sleeping choleric part.
Yeah.
Like if phlegmatic's the watery one, then occasionally there's a big wave. There
is, and actually Steiner called the phlegmatic the sleeping choleric. So often phlegmatics will tell me that they're choleric, and I'll say, no, you're not. You are a phlegmatic, and that sleeping choleric part like comes in. So if you can imagine a wave and it's placid and it just moves and then it crashes down. Well, that's their like when they're motivated to do something, that's the time. And so you really have to watch that with your children and find something that they get really excited about. I've known a lot of moms that have had real struggle getting a phlegmatic started, but once they're started, they're going. And usually you see it through. I mean, there have been a few times that Harry's not seen something through and you're like, I don't know what the heck happened there, because his temperament usually rolls out. I was thinking about the books that he read all the way to like three-quarters of the...
He had like a 3-part series and he got to like 100 pages at the end of the 3rd book. He's like, I'm done.
Yeah, which is not generally what a phlegmatic does. I think that was a little dose of autism in there. And we were like, don't you want to know what happens? He's like, no, that's all right.
Well, you know, we have like conversations like that where I'm like, well, he saw the trailer for the new Godzilla movie and he's like, do I have to see the first one? And I said, yeah, you do. Well, are you sure? I don't think I need to see that one, but it looks like I want to see this. It's like, no, you have to see the first one. No, I'm not going to do that. It's like, okay, whatever.
He just thinks, maybe he's got a thing for Millie Bobby. I don't know.
I don't know. That's the kind of, but I mean, one thing that's funny when it comes to the sleeping choleric thing is there are situations where I want to go full in on something and not let myself get distracted. It's like, I got to get this done and I'm just going to dive in until I come back up. Sometimes I can go to the place where if something's uncomfortable, I'd rather pull the Band-Aid off fast and get it over with.
He's a pull the Band-Aid off fast kind of guy.
I remember telling you about when I had my wisdom teeth taken out and they said, well, if you stay awake, you recover faster than if you put you under. And I stayed awake through the whole thing because I just went over with. Because sometimes I'll trade like uncomfortable for a short time to get it over with. And
you must have had a good dentist.
But also,
I'm like, put me to sleep, thank you.
I mean, also that could be to my detriment because I'm glad that I have everybody to balance me during Comic-Con, because if I was by myself,
oh yes,
I would only get 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night, probably wouldn't eat and run around and do everything possible.
Right.
And then I would like regret it for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, because he'd feel bad then afterwards. But I have to say, like, with regards to that, because I know how excited he gets and how much fun he has with that, because I am who I am and we're really equally yoked, I can warn everybody around it. Just let your dad go. This is his thing. This is his thing. It's his Christmas. Just let him go. He has a fun time. Let him go have fun. And I tend to be like very like forgiving of anything that you do that week. And not that he's not a mean person or anything like that, but he's like very focused on like having a good time. And so I think that when you can balance and you can appreciate each other's temperaments, then you can do things like that where you can go, it's all right, just go. Just like, you know, when I get into like doing something head on, he'll do the same thing for me. I think that where I really see your balance is you have a lot of times like that where you go, I just got to dive in and get something done. And it's almost like he turns the Sanguine off and sets him aside, and says, nope, you can't be in control. I'm just 100% in control.
It's like, I'm tired of thinking about this. I just want it done, over with, and move on with my life.
Right. And so I think like work-wise, he does that fairly well. And I think a lot of phlegmatics end up being managers. And I think that's because they have that sort of like placid temperament where people can come to them, they're open, they can read people, and then they can get things done when they need to. And so yeah. Okay, so let's see, we have another comment. Ellie says, funny, I was sure I was heavy phlegmatic with some choleric, but after listening to your last 3 videos, I think I have a substantial chunk of all 3. Well, you're not choleric and phlegmatic. Did you listen to that part? So you are phlegmatic with that. The phlegmatic by nature has the sleeping choleric in them. And so that's that part where a lot of moms think that they go, I don't know why I can't get started on something, and I just yell all the time. I must be choleric. So the choleric is not a yeller by nature. The choleric is a leader by nature and gets things done. And so, but we're often loud and we're often like to the point. And so we can seem like yellers, and I have absolutely been a yeller in my life. We can use our voices more that way, but in general, it's not. In general, it's not out of anger. It might sound like it's out of impatience, but it's not out of anger. And so I think if you are a yeller and you're wondering, am I just a mean choleric? I want you to step back and ask yourself, what other things are actually showing up more? If you are, because often people that are melancholy also think that they're choleric because they're yelling, but really it comes from a different place. A melancholy yells out of anger and frustration, and nobody's listening to me. A phlegmatic person will yell because they waited too long to act. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah.
Waited too long to act. And now they're like, why can't you guys just sit still? What is going on here? Why are you bouncing off the walls? Because they waited too long to act. Like 10 minutes before that, they should have gotten up and gone for a walk. So that's where a phlegmatic yells. A choleric will yell because of, like, listen to me, I'm the leader, you need to follow me. And often their yelling is not from an anger place, it's from a more firm place. So let's see. Becca says, can you be a sanguine phlegmatic? Yes. I think that's what I am. I think that's what you are too, sweetie. The real me, but can that combination work? I think and think and think, but have a million projects. Yes, that absolutely can. Absolutely. Those two work. Actually, I see that one often. Maybe that's why I get the projects done is do the phlegmatic. Yes, absolutely. I think that's the, and you might take longer at them. Like I think about you, Erik loves to build models, and he'll often have, I think I'm looking across the room, have like 2 or 3 that are in the stages of completion, but he's working on them all and they will all get finished. Now a sanguine might be like, I'm done working on Boba Fett, I'm going to go over here and work.
Well, it's like,
and maybe never come back to it.
I need to use X color, so it's
he just works on what he can and then sets it aside and then starts.
I have to use this silver color, so everything that needs that, I'll do that, and then I'll move on to the next one. And then... But
he'll finish it. So absolutely, that's absolutely a possibility. Let's see.
You're looking at a guy over there with no arms right now.
So. I know. I'm looking across the room at where his workstation is, and Boba Fett has no arms. It's kind of weird. Let's see. Tally says, I'm a melancholic yeller because no one hears me. My husband is a phlegmatic yeller because he waited too long. Yep, absolutely. I think that's very much accurate for what I see. Very much accurate. Becca says, can we talk about dealing with frustration with this temperament? I know this is one reason why I wait until the kids are... Hey, what'd you do?
I was trying to catch them more.
Wait until the kids are in bed to do housework. I want to be able to go steady until the job is done. It's already taken a lot of effort to get myself into a job, and I don't want to be interrupted. So dealing with frustration, I think that a lot of it comes with failing to act in time. So if I completely understand this idea of you wanting to wait until kids are in bed to do housework. Like from a choleric standpoint, I'm like, just move out of the way, I'll do it myself. But from the standpoint of needing to teach your children, you have to give them an opportunity to do those jobs. And so in order for you to not have that piece of frustration, you probably need to start sooner. Like before you even get tipped to the frustration point, you want to see that frustration point and you want to go, oh, I want to stay away from there, and start 20 minutes before, 10 minutes before. You want to really work to instill good habits. And in doing that, you have to be proactive about it. You have to be in a place of, okay, this is what we're doing, and I'm teaching you how to do these things because it's good for you long haul. And then when you are in that place with them, you're saying, okay, we all need to go clean. You want to not be in a place of waiting until it's like making you mad, dirty. You want to step it back and knowing that that when you have built a nest at the side of the bed, that you probably want to clean that up sooner. So that I'm just teasing. But that I'm teasing, but that is he doesn't care. So like when we moved into this house, he was like, "Which side of the bed do you want?" I said, "The side next to the door," and because then he can have his space, and it can be messy and it doesn't bother me because I don't see it.
Yeah.
But that's something that we had to like learn. We had to figure that. In the last house, he was closer to the door. And that's the first thing you see when you walk in. And I had to really learn to be like, okay, that's not my mess. I don't have to worry about it. I just scooch his stuff over. But it's easier for me to not have to look at it.
It's funny is our oldest daughter was more frustrated with my phlegmaticness than probably anybody. Because if you were gone and I was...
She's mad melancholy.
Well, you were gone and I'd be in charge. And she's like, this is crazy. You need to get a handle on this. And I'm like, they're not hurting each other. They're not destroying property. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal, and you need to. This is unacceptable. I'm like,
she's also somebody who thinks she's choleric, and she's not.
But then I'll admit there were times that
you waited too long.
But I think if you go too soon, then you're just like on top of people.
Right. No, I don't think that's a danger with phlegmatic. Going too soon.
Yeah, I took too long at times, but it's just funny.
I think that figuring out that balance is golden, and there are still times where he's like, "Oh, I missed that window," yeah. but I do it too. I mean, so it's definitely not like oh man, beat yourself up because you're not perfect. Definitely not. But like knowing it about yourself, and if you can be on top of it 80% of the time, then the other 20% will not feel so. Not feel so bad. It will not feel so frustrating. Tally says, I don't want to be a yeller and can go through phases and not yell. We're going to talk about your temperament a lot on the 29th. I'm guessing that's the one that most people will say to me, I don't want to be a melancholy. I'm like, dude, there are a lot of good things about the melancholy, so don't stress. I think that I get that one a lot, and I don't want to be a choleric. I'm like, why? We're awesome. Why don't you want to be? No, I'm just teasing. Rhiannon says, my poor husband is so choleric and melancholic. Nope, he's not. He's not both. And my mess used to drive him crazy, but over time he says he's learned to let it go. But after a while, he'll try to remind me nicely. I say reminds you nicely, but he's not those two together. And I've said that before, and I know that there are people that will say that I'm not correct, but I've studied a lot of people, and those two don't go together. I've never seen one. Every time somebody says I'm a choleric melancholy, I go, talk to me about that. Nope, your melancholy is mad. Because it looks the same. At least from the outside, it looks the same. A choleric will yell for a different reason and leads for a different reason. A melancholy yells and is in that space because somebody has done something to them. It is a personal attack. A choleric will not yell at a personal attack generally. Generally. I mean, if somebody's making us mad, but then we're over it like that. And so like coming from it from a place, there's usually not any feeling to it. A melancholy will attack and will yell from a place of, you have done this to me. You hurt my feelings. I'm really mad at you. That's not the same place that a choleric comes from. So there's that anger space is a really defining space as to which temperament is which. And I truly believe that. I have studied it for a long time, and can there be a super driven melancholy? Yes, absolutely. In fact, they are often some of the most driven people. And the reason why is because they feel guilty all the time.
It's fueled by emotion.
It's definitely fueled by emotion. It is definitely fueled by emotion.
Either they're trying to fill their bucket, or
they feel like they need to fill everybody else's bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's their job in life is to fill everybody else's bucket. It's not driven by definitely from a different place.
Desire to get things done necessarily as much as it's how they feel about themselves.
And how they think how they think everybody should be, but not from an emotional place. Like when I go, I can't understand that. You should do this. That's from a logical place. That's not from like an emotional place.
Phlegmatic can do things to avoid confrontation, or they do have a desire to get things done, or they just want to be on the other side of it and not think about it. And well,
I think that there's stuff going on in our alley. I think I was thinking about that, what you just said about avoiding confrontation. I think that what ends up happening when you have a phlegmatic in a marriage situation and they don't want to like pull their weight or make changes that are positive for everybody, they will never divorce you. You will have to be the one that says this has to happen or we're going to have to get a divorce. They will never divorce you. So if you are in a place, but then if you do file for divorce, then it could get ugly for sure. And I don't like to talk about divorce because I'm definitely not a proponent of that. But I think that I've had this conversation with phlegmatic couples before, where they would rather be upset and hate each other than go through the discomfort of fixing it or getting a divorce. They would rather live in dysfunction. And that is really sad. Really sad. Because as a choleric, when I was in that space, I was tired. When I finally got healthy enough to realize that I didn't want to live in that dysfunction anymore. I can remember when I went into the therapist that I had when I was going through my divorce, and I went in and I sat down and told him my whole story, and because he wanted to know, like, why are you here? You know, that's the first thing they ask. So why are you here? And I was like, well, I'm trying to figure out how to save my marriage. And then I gave him this whole spiel. And at the end, he looked at me, he said, I actually think I'm your therapist to help you get through your divorce. And I was like, thank you. It was like this huge weight had been lifted off of me because I had somebody else see that that's what had to happen. And then it allowed me to be in that space of, getting through that. And I was healthy enough, but when you are not willing to change, not willing to make changes to, for your marriage, for the better, for the good of your children, for the better of everybody, that's a really tough place to be. Because I go, wow, you're really committed to that, like really committed to it.
Well, we're getting towards the end here.
Is there anything that we didn't cover that you think? I'm just going to go through this list. Appears lazy, likes to eat, stubborn. So these would be like the more like polarized pieces. Likes comfort, loyal, peacemaker. Totally agree with that. Peacemaker. They are the peacemakers. Loving, steadfast, methodical, and calm. Unless you're like I have seen Erik throw a chair. He was really mad.
Not at somebody.
No, not at somebody.
But yeah.
No, he is usually like, wait, when I tell people he got mad, they're like, really? He was mad? Yeah. So if you are not a Thinking, Feeling, Willing member and you want to know some awesome, we'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.